Hello students, how are you all? This is Anup sir, your English teacher. Students, in the last video, we had completed half of the lesson, that is packing. Now, in this video, we'll continue with the next half of this lesson and complete the whole lesson in this video. This lesson, packing, is written by Jerome K. Jerome. So students, let's begin with the lesson. They began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. And I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the things would soon become interesting. Students, light-hearted spirit here means to be careful. Evidently means clearly, obviously. Exception means a person or thing that does not follow the general rule. So students, George and Harris started packing the hamper in a happy mood. They wanted to show Jerome that they could pack well. Jerome waited for them to create a mess because he considered Harris to be the worst packer in the world. Jerome looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and cakes and tomatoes, which had to be packed into the hampers. He thought that as the boys would mess up, it would be an interesting thing to watch. So he waited for the fun to begin. It did. They started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. So students, the moment for which Jerome was waiting started. The scene became interesting as they broke a cup at the start. Jerome says that they broke the cup to indicate that they could do that too and to make things interesting. He says that they did this to get the attention. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it, and they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. Students, here the word squashed means crush or squeeze something with force so that it becomes flat, soft, or out of shape. So students, Harris placed the jar of strawberry jam on top of the tomatoes. The tomatoes were squeezed by the jar and then they removed the damaged tomatoes with the help of a teaspoon. And then it was George's turn and he trod on the butter. I didn't say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that it made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. Students, here trod on means stepped on. So students, as Jerome was watching the whole scene, Jerome says, now it was George's turn. George stepped on the butter. Jerome remained silent but sat on the edge of the table to watch the action. His silence irritated his friends. They became nervous and stepped on the things. They kept the things behind them, and later, when they needed them, they could not find it. They placed the pie on the bottom and kept heavy things on them, which smashed the pie. They upset Salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. After George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. They did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harris sat on it, and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. Students, here the word upset means overturned. The word scrape means drag or pull. So students, the boys overturned the can of salt on everything. Jerome says that they created a lot of confusion with the small piece of butter. He had not seen anyone create so much mess with butter that was worth 1 or 2 pence, meaning it was a very small piece of butter, as they did. George removed it from his slipper and tried to put it into the kettle. As he was unable to do that, he placed it on a chair. Harris sat on it. The butter stuck to him. He stood up and both the boys went around the room looking for the piece of butter. I'll take my oath, I put it down on that chair, said George, staring at the empty seat. I saw you do it myself not a minute ago, said Harris. Students, here the word oath means to swear upon something. So students, George looked intently at the empty seat on which he had placed the butter a few minutes ago. He swore of truthfulness that he had placed it there not even a minute ago. And Harris agreed to him, and he said that I myself saw you putting it there. Then they started around the room again, looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. So students, once again, they searched for it in the room, around the whole room. They met in the middle of the room again, empty-handed, and they started looking at each other. Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of, said George. So mysterious, said Harris. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. Why, here it is all the time, he exclaimed indignantly. Students, here indignantly means in a manner indicating anger or annoyance at something perceived as unfair. So students, George said that the disappearance of the butter was the most amazing thing that he had known. Harris said that the disappearance of the butter was a mystery. George saw the butter sticking to the Harris back and said that it had been there all this time and showed anger towards Harris. Where? Cried Harris, spinning round. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, flying after him. And they got it off and packed it in the teapot. So students, Harris turned around and asked where it was. He started looking for the butter behind him. George flew to Harris' back and asked him to stand still. They removed the butter and packed it inside the teapot. It is so humorous that still they packed this butter to eat it later on. Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in the way and be sworn at. If he can squirm in anywhere where he particularly is not wanted and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day has not been wasted. Students, sworn at means get scolded. Squirm means to wriggle or twist one's body. The word nuisance means to cause inconvenience or annoyance. So, students, Jerome's pet dog, Montmorency, participated in all this. His aim was to interrupt everyone and then get scolded for it. Jerome adds that if Montmorency was able to twist into a place and create nuisance by angering people and get things thrown at him, in return, he felt that he had utilized the day in a good way. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object. And when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. Students, here the word stumble means to trip over a hurdle. The word curse means scold. The word conceit means here his pride in himself. So, students, Montmorency's aim was to get people trip over him and get scolded. By doing this, he felt that he had fulfilled his aim and would feel proud of achievement. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed, and he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris or George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold damn nose that they wanted. He put his leg into the jam, and he worried the teaspoons, and he pretended that the lemons were rats, and got into the hamper and killed 3 of them before Harris could land him with the frying pan. Students, here the word worried means disturbed. The word pretended means to behave as if something is true when you know that it is not. Land him means hit or punch someone. So, students, Montmorency sat on the things which were to be packed. He thought that when George and Harris reached out for the things to be packed, they were searching for his cold damn nose and would bring it forward for them. He stepped into the jam bottle. He shook the teaspoons. He acted as if the lemons were the rats and stepped into the hamper to kill them. So he killed the 3 rats there. He was stopped by Harris, who hit him with a frying pan. Harris said, "I encouraged him." "I didn't encourage him. A dog like that does not want any encouragement. It's the natural, original sin that is born in him that makes him do things like that." So, students, Harris blamed Jerome for encouraging Montmorency for doing all the mischief. Jerome says that a dog like Montmorency did not need any encouragement. He did not encourage Montmorency. It was born to be like that and act like that. It was natural, original behavior of his to be naughty. The packing was done at 12:50, and Harris sat on the big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken, which reflection seemed to comfort him. He also said he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night, and we went upstairs. Students, here the word reflection means thought. So students, at 12:50 they had packed the hampers. Harris sat on it and said that hopefully nothing would break in it. George was indifferent and said that if something broke, it would not matter. As they were ready for bed, they went upstairs to sleep. And today, Harris was to sleep at their house. We tossed for beds, and Harris had to sleep with me. He said, "Do you prefer the inside or the outside, Jay?" I said, "I generally prefer to sleep inside a bed." Harris said, "It was odd." George said, "What time shall I wake you fellows?" Harris said 7. I said no, 6, because I want to write some letters. Students, here the word tossed means threw something somewhere lightly or casually. So students, as they settled in their beds, Harris asked Jerome if he preferred the inside or the outside of the bed. Jerome said that he preferred to sleep on the inside of the bed. This seemed strange to Harris. George asked them that he should wake them up at what time. Harris replied 7, while Jerome wanted to be woken up at 6, as he had wanted to write some letters. Harris and I had a bit of a row over it, but at last split the difference and said 6:30. Wake us at 6:30. George, we said. Students, a bit of a row means an argument. Split the difference. This means that they agreed on 6:30 because it was half between 6 and 7. So students, Harris and Jerome had a discussion on the time, and finally they settled on 6:30, each accommodating his time by half an hour. George made no answer, and we found on going over that he had been slept for some time. So we placed the bath where he could tumble into it on getting out in the morning, and went to bed ourselves. Students, here the word tumble means to fall quickly and without control. So students, George did not respond as he was slept. Harris and George made mischief by placing the bathtub next to George's bed so that he would fall into it as he woke up in the morning. This was the way that he would take a bath as soon as he got up. So students, this is all about this lesson. We have completed this lesson, that is packing, in 2 different videos. In the next lecture, I will be sending you the notes in PDF form, which you will have to write down in your classwork. Till then, this is Anup sir saying thank you and goodbye.